down, I will maybe give you a bit of a heads up on who is next, as that process taking a little bit of time. We will then hear from Monique, Ryan, Zoe, Daniel. You'd be up next. Stop Hazara genocide! Stop Hazara genocide! Stop Hazara genocide! Stop Hazara genocide!
On Hazara people in Afghanistan who were targeted because of their ethnicity and Shia religion in Kabul, directly targeting young Hazara women this time at an educational centre. A truly inhumane and barbaric attack. Monsters targeting school children. A total perversion of religion. I want to make a few acknowledgements. Firstly, to the people here who are with us tonight, who've lost loved ones, family and friends in the 56 people killed in this shocking attack, including a niece of an Australian, family and friends of Australians, and others who are seriously injured. We are so deeply sorry for your loss, and we stand with you in your grief and share your outrage at this attack. I'll also echo, I think on behalf of, perhaps we can say, all the other speakers, I'll do one set of acknowledgements so those other speakers from Parliament don't have to do them again. But to the Mayor, Councillor Jim Mehmedi, the Deputy Mayor, Eden Foster, to Councillor Garrard, to my federal parliamentary colleagues, thank you for being here with the Hazara community tonight. To Dr. Michelle Ananda Raja, to Cassandra Fernando, the member for Holt, to the independent members, Zoe Daniel and Dr. Monique Ryan, thank you for travelling across Melbourne to be here with us tonight. To Lee Talamas, to other Labor candidates who I can see there. I'll also acknowledge you, General Morad, I think the first Hazara general in the Afghan army, to Jaswinder Singh from Sikh Volunteers, and also, as was said, to other members, non-Hazara members of the Afghan community in Australia, thank you for being here and showing solidarity and calling out what's happening to the Hazara people. Now, last time I stood here and spoke to you at a vigil, sadly, just like this some months ago, I was a member of the opposition. And I'm pleased and relieved that I now talk to you as a member of the Australian government, of the Labor government, here tonight on behalf of Minister Andrew Giles as well. He sends his apologies. I saw him today, I spoke to him this afternoon, and he's asked me to convey his message in a moment. But firstly, just a few words as your Member of Parliament. I'm so proud to represent your community. The seat of Bruce, Senate here on Dandenong, has more people born in Afghanistan than any other electorate in Australia, and I think the largest Hazara community. A large share of the 71,000 Hazara people, or thereabouts, who now call Australia home. Thank you for your contribution to our community, for your support for democracy, for your love of education, and for your contribution that your children make to our primary schools and schools. I meet so many school captains from the Afghan and the Hazara communities. I'm so sad and angry again at this senseless violence, and we gather tonight here in southeast Melbourne as part of a national vigil held right across Australia. But of course, while making your contribution, building your lives here in Australia, Hazara people remain connected with the plight of other Hazara people in Afghanistan through family and friends and community links. And an atrocity like this reverberates across the world and affects us all. Now, as a member of the government, I stand with you, as I always have and will continue to speak up against this violence in support of compassion and generosity in Australia's migration program. I've been asked by the organisers to say a few words about migration issues, which I'll do in a moment, but firstly, the Minister has asked me to read you his message formally on behalf of the Australian government, and I'll read that now. The recent senseless attacks at the Kaj Education Centre in Kabul saw dozens of innocent school children lose their lives. Everyone, regardless of race, gender or belief, deserves the right to education and to live in peace. My deepest condolences to the victims' loved ones, and I recognise that this is an especially painful time for the Hazara community and the broader Afghan diaspora. The Albanese government stands in solidarity today with those attending vigils right across the country this weekend and is steadfast in its commitment to supporting the community at this distressing time. Since coming to government, I have met with community leaders right across the country to listen to their concerns and understandings of what we can do to provide support for those in Afghanistan, in neighbouring countries, and for those in Australia who may have loved ones in Afghanistan. The Albanese government has made a commitment to transition those who have been found to be owed our protection on temporary protection visas to permanent protection. We will keep this promise and meet our commitment as soon as possible. In addition, there are 26,500 places especially reserved for Afghan nationals over the next 4 years under the humanitarian program, plus at least an additional 5,000 places for family reunification. Women, girls and Hazara people as an ethnic minority remain a priority within the humanitarian program. The Albanese government is steadfast in its commitment to supporting the community at this distressing time. Now, I don't want to talk for too long as we're here in solidarity, not for long political speeches, but I've been asked by the organisers just to touch briefly on a few issues in response to those urgent requests from the community that we heard earlier on behalf of the government. Firstly, to confirm, the government reaffirms its stance and understanding that these are not random attacks. Of course, Afghanistan is not a place for millions of its citizens of all different backgrounds. But these attacks we are seeing, which seem to be escalating, are deliberately targeted at Hazara people in Hazara neighbourhoods, schools and facilities. And this needs to be called out and acknowledged here in Australia and across the world, including at the United Nations. Ultimately, only the United Nations, through its processes, can formally declare a genocide. But it is clear that people are being killed just for being Hazara and Shiite. Now, Australia does not recognise the Taliban as a government. But if they claim to be the government of Afghanistan, then they must ensure security is provided to all people in the country and not stand by while people with genocidal intent engage in these atrocities against Hazara people. We denounce these attacks and all terrorism. Secondly, as the Minister made clear, we've already engaged extensively with leaders and groups in the Hazara community and will continue to do so, especially here in southeast Melbourne, but right across the country. The government stands with you and Labor stands with you, shoulder to shoulder. And thirdly, some brief remarks on visa issues as I close, because I know these latest attacks exacerbate the concern, the fears, the worries, the desperation for Hazara people to be reunited with family and friends. Now, as you know, the government has inherited a total mess from the previous Liberal government in the visa system. That is a sad fact. Nearly 1 million visa applications we found backlogged in the Department of Home Affairs. 1 million. It is a broken department with thousands of staff cut across 9 years. The government did not make this mess, but we are taking responsibility to clean it up. We've already deployed 500 new visa processing staff to start clearing that backlog. But the hard reality is this is going to take time. In life, it's easy to knock down a house and it takes hard work and months or years to rebuild one. So for those people here tonight holding temporary protection visas or SHEV visas, I say to you very clearly, we reaffirm our commitment to providing permanent protection in this country for genuine refugees. Permanent protection, permanent visas. I wish it had already happened, like you. I know the impacts for people. I talk to you every day in the community, in my office. I wish it had happened, but we are making good progress. It is not a simple thing administratively or legally, and has to be run through the budget process as well as there are financial implications. I'm pleased to say that we have now settled within the government on the solution, which we're testing with the Law Council of Australia, the refugee experts and others. We'll hope to have more to say soon after the budget in just a few weeks, but please be assured this will happen as soon as possible. I understand the daily impacts for people on TPVs. The ridiculous system of travel authorisations, which I hope we can soon get rid of, and your inability to sponsor your families and visit your families, especially in Pakistan. The citizenship delays and the family visa delays are also being addressed. The Minister has deemed them formally a high priority now to clear the backlogs. I'm also pleased to say there are about 4,000 or 5,000 people left in this country who applied years ago for the visa for their husbands or their wives and their children. They were actively discriminated against by the Liberals. And the Minister has formally committed, and I'm pleased to tell everyone, that he's now reviewing Ministerial Direction 80 to get rid of this blatant discrimination that is affecting so many Hazara people. This was a direction, for those who don't know what Ministerial Direction 80 is, most people here would. This was introduced by Peter Dutton and Scott Morrison to say that anyone who arrived by boat got the lowest priority for family union. And so it means that thousands of people, including thousands of Hazara people, have missed their children growing up as their visas sat in the department under the Liberals, going nowhere, never being looked at. We will fix that. Again, I stress, and we work together, it can't happen overnight. There is simply so many visa applications there, but we are making progress. And finally, on the humanitarian visa intake, over 220,000 people have now applied for those places, and we expect many more when all of the applications are typed in and assessed, possibly up to 300,000 people. We are, as I said, applying additional resources, 500 extra staff already into the department. And I point out that when Kabul fell over a year ago, the Liberals provided not one extra staff member to the visa processing area, not one. The sad reality is that those forms, as you know, because you fill them out for your families, are sent in by hand and they have to be typed into the computer before we can then make the assessment across all of those applications. We are starting to make progress, and once we've inputted all those applications, then the government will be in a position to assess them against the priorities for those who've applied and have a conversation with the community and community leaders about how we then proceed. I hear the community's call for 20,000 or so more places, and I acknowledge personally the case for an increase. I also acknowledge, as community leaders have said to me, the understanding that even with additional places, not everyone will come to safety in Australia. There are simply so many people at risk, and Australia must be part of a global response, working with other countries. But as I've said in the Parliament, and this is my personal view that I'll keep advocating for, as a country we need to be generous in our approach, given that special history with Afghanistan. Personally, I would like to see additional places allocated with appropriate priorities for women and minorities most at risk, including, of course, the Hazara people. None of this can or will happen quickly as you or I would like. Sadly, it's just not possible to do by next week, but more resources are being applied. The Minister is committed to the humanitarian stream, and I'll keep speaking up for our Hazara community and the need for Australia to be generous. We stand in solidarity, and it is up to Australia and the entire world to speak up. Only the global community can stop terrorism and stop genocide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you for that strong statement and stance of solidarity and explaining some of the issues that deeply pain our community here tonight, and describing what the plans are, what the government plans to do and how long it would take, because I'm sure everyone here understands that those things don't happen overnight, but an explanation is very, very appreciated. We're very glad to see members of all sides of politics here. Yes, Labor is in government, but Labor also needs to be held accountable. And very, very deeply grateful that we've got independent member for Kooyong, Dr. Monique Ryan here with us tonight, and all the other speakers remaining. If I could this sounds very rude, but if you could keep your statements of solidarity brief for your own colleagues. As you all know, everyone has to attend to other duties. But while Monique's making her way to the stage, we'll just maybe chant twice. Stop Hazara genocide! Stop Hazara genocide! Stop Hazara genocide!
Thank you. It's really difficult to look at these photos behind us. We've already thanked the traditional owners of this land a couple of times tonight. All of us here are immigrants to this country. Virtually everyone here, unless they're a First Nations person, has come in the last 10 or 20 years. My own family has come in the last generation. Dr. Ananda Raja and I, Dr. Ananda Raja is a Labor politician, I'm an independent politician. But I look at the faces of those girls in those photos and I think about the fact that Dr. Ananda Raja and I are women who have had the opportunity to have an education in this country and to become doctors and then to represent our communities. Those girls will never have that opportunity. As an independent member of the Parliament, I will hold the government to account. I will ask them to allow another 20,000 people from Afghanistan to this country every year. I will ask them to end bridging visas and to end chefs. There are 151 members of the House of Representatives in Australia, and you have 4 of them here today. We all care very deeply about what has happened to your community. We're all very, very sad for your loss, and we will do our very, very best to make things better in the future. Thank you for having us here.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Zoe Daniel, the member for Goldstein, also an independent. Tonight, I'd like to talk about 2 of the girls who were killed in this attack. In her diary, 16-year-old Mazia Mohammadi drew up a list of what she wanted to do in her life. At the very top of her list was to meet the best-selling Turkish-British novelist Elif Shafak. Mazia wanted to write a novel someday. But Mazia's book will never be written unless we tell her story through events like this, by exposing and condemning terror and persecution. Mazia was killed in a suicide bombing attack on the Kaj Learning Centre. Her 16-year-old cousin and best friend Hajar Mohammadi was also among those killed, the majority of whom were girls. And I see a photograph here of Mazia and her cousin Hajar. Mazia's story reached me via a report on NPR on this indefensible attack, which yet again targeted Hazaras, girls and education. Children should not be killed for going to school. Contacted by NPR, the novelist Elif Shafak said, "These girls were targeted and attacked both because they were female and because they were from a persecuted minority, Hazaras. They have been systematically discriminated against and denied their most basic human rights." A view that I've come to after my work overseas as a journalist, much of that time which was spent with refugees from Afghanistan in transit countries, particularly Malaysia, is that education is power. I believe it is the way to a powerful and successful Afghanistan. Yet attempts to crush the potential of the nation's women and girls, especially Hazaras, continue. Attacks targeting Hazaras, as you would know, have increased significantly since the Taliban returned to power last year, while the regime simultaneously goes about restricting women's rights and closing down girls' schools. This is gender violence, and it must be called out as such. The Taliban is not a government that I nor Australia recognises, but if it claims to be running Afghanistan, it must take action to prevent and investigate these attacks. If it doesn't do it, the UN must. I note, as has been mentioned, that advocacy groups have called for humanitarian visa processing to be expedited for refugees who've applied for asylum in Australia. I strongly support these calls for expedited processing. As a parliamentarian from a nation that was a participant in the Afghanistan conflict, we must live up to our responsibilities. Our visa system must be fixed, and we must have more places for people from Afghanistan, particularly Hazara women and girls. I finish by offering my goodwill and my sympathy and concern to all of you for the grief, the pain, the anxiety and the worry that you're experiencing in regard to this terrible attack, but also my thoughts are with your families and your friends who are still in Afghanistan. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. Thank you, Zoe. Thank you, Monique. As independent members, as newly elected independent members in the federal parliament, it is very, very, very heartening to have you here with us, but to also hear what you're going to commit and how you're going to be holding other decision makers to account. And I once again apologise that you have had to push your plans back a little bit, and we deeply appreciate you staying with us and sitting in solidarity.